You will go high. Love, grace, humility will win. And then you tell everybody to go to hell. You think that's going to work for you, Coach White? Think that's going to work for you? The reality of the situation is none of that stuff will win if it's left up to you, Stephanie White. Because you're not handling it right. You playing right into their hands. Right into their hands.
What happens when Stephen A. Smith stops analyzing the Indiana Fever and starts questioning Stephanie White's leadership directly? A heated controversy surrounding Sophie Cunningham, DJ Carrington, and a disputed coaching decision has now put White under an uncomfortable spotlight, while Caitlin Clark and her teammates appear ready to defend her. But what exactly did Stephen A. see that made him challenge White so bluntly, and could this confrontation expose a much deeper problem inside Indiana?
Our player safety is always a top priority for me. One of the things I pride myself on is my relationships with players. I thought the play got called right. Thankfully, Sophie's okay. Was it egregious? Absolutely. When you have a chance to watch that over and over and over on replay, you can see that. I didn't have that in real time. The hate, the fear-mongering, the divisiveness, the stuff that's trying to hijack our league will not win. It won't win. We are united. We are connected. We will not be
Stephen A. Smith just turned the Indiana Fever's latest controversy into something much bigger. Because this time the question is not simply whether Stephanie White made a bad judgment call.
Not embracing the reality of the tense situation that the WNBA, and especially you as the coach of the Indiana Fever, is involved in. There are folks in Indiana at a home game booing you. You ain't the road team, you the home team, you the home coach, and they booing you. And Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark can speak up for you all they want to, as they did, and as they should have.
The question is whether the Fever coach has lost the confidence of the very people she is supposed to lead, and Stephen A. Smith is now demanding answers that are becoming increasingly difficult to avoid.
Stephanie White, I've been a defender, the coach of the Fever. Get her out of there. Get her out of there. Fire her ass today. I don't want her back on that bench. Stop defending the other players. Oh, she plays hard, DJ. That's just her being her. You see Caitlin in the press conference almost cover her ears and her eyes. Defend your players. First of all, you're wrong. It was a dirty play. She's gone. But when do you ever see in like the NBA, a coach not defend their own players? She hasn't done it with Caitlin when Caitlin got punched in the throat.
The controversy began with a play that has somehow managed to produce more drama than some entire WNBA games. During the Indiana Fever's August 8th matchup against the Chicago Sky, DJ Carrington was ejected after making contact with Sophie Cunningham around the head and neck area on a breakaway play. The officials assessed the foul as a flagrant 2, which meant Carrington was sent out of the game immediately.
Y'all see what happened when this young lady got ejected from a WNBA game the other day for a flagrant foul on Sophie Cunningham? Did y'all see that? She got ejected from the game for that flagrant foul right there. And I'll be damned if that wasn't a flagrant 2. She mugged her. Damn near came across like decapitating her, for crying out loud. That was definitely a hard foul. Make no mistake about it. Nobody can argue about it. You can say what you want. We know what we saw. No way around it. The Johnny Carrington foul was clearly unnecessary. It was a flagrant foul penalty too. It was absolutely positively correct call.
On its own, that should have been the end of the basketball story. There was a hard foul. The officials reviewed it. A decision was made, and everybody could move on, except nobody moved on. Instead, the incident exploded into a much wider argument involving player safety, coaching, social media, race, politics, fan loyalty, and eventually the future of Stephanie White in Indiana. Suddenly, the Fever were not just dealing with what happened on the court. They were dealing with what their own coach said about it afterward. That explanation might sound reasonable until you understand why many people were unconvinced, because cameras do not care about press conferences. personal relationships, or carefully chosen explanations. They simply record what happened, and the footage circulating online has given critics plenty of material to question Stephanie White's account of the incident involving DeJoni Carrington and Sophie Cunningham that has created an uncomfortable contradiction between what viewers believe they saw and what White said she saw. Online discussions have focused heavily on whether her explanation was consistent with the available footage, and that is precisely where Stephen A. Smith entered the conversation.
Crossroads that Stephanie is stuck in is she knows DeJoni is a good person, but now she's coaching people who are likely taking money from the Heritage Foundation, has a large MAGA racist fan base, and they didn't like that she defended DeJoni.
Take personally any suggestions that I don't 100% always have my players' back.
Smith did not approach the issue as if it were merely a debate over whether a foul should have been upgraded from a common foul to a flagrant. Instead, he went after the larger leadership question, and that distinction is important because his criticism was directed at White's responsibility as the head coach of the Indiana Fever. His argument was essentially that if you are the head coach, watching the game is not an optional side quest. You are supposed to know what is happening on the floor, recognize when one of your players has taken a dangerous hit, and understand when a situation requires an immediate response. When one of your players is left on the floor after a violent collision, fans naturally expect the coach to react before somebody on social media has enough time to upload 3 camera angles, add dramatic music, creating another layer of scrutiny around the situation. That connection has fueled speculation from people who believe White's familiarity with Carrington may have influenced how she initially interpreted the play. However, that theory also needs to be treated carefully because knowing a player does not automatically mean a coach will defend everything that player does.
That's a flagrant 2 every single damn time in the NBA and the WNBA. But you know things have devolved when you've got the Attorney General for the state of Florida saying that's why WNBA games ain't here because guess what? We are the prosecutors. Attorney General James Uthmeyer, the WNBA knows better than to play games down here in Florida because I'll be charging people with assault. I should probably clarify assault and battery. That is from the Attorney General of the state of Florida.
Coaches
spend years working with athletes, learning their personalities, understanding their tendencies, and developing relationships that can continue long after the player leaves the team. White supporters can reasonably argue that she was describing what she believed she had seen at game speed rather than deliberately protecting a former player. Her critics, however, are asking a different question, and it is one that is much harder to dismiss. Would White have reacted the same way if the situation involved someone she had never coached? Become one of the biggest reasons this controversy refuses to disappear, because once trust becomes part of the conversation, every explanation starts getting examined under a microscope. Then another moment changed the temperature completely. White addressed the growing criticism before the Fever faced the New York Liberty. And instead of delivering the carefully polished statement coaches usually give when controversy surrounds their team, White essentially told her critics to go to hell. There is something almost beautifully chaotic about talking about grace and humility before essentially informing critics that they can take a long walk in the opposite direction. It is the kind of statement that sounds as though 2 completely different personalities were fighting over control of the microphone that question has.
Not you're wrong, but it starts to make me think you care more about the overlying social issues and not pissing off other people in the league and saying men can play in the league, because she's one of those players, coaches, when asked, always is taking the far left side of it. This isn't politics. Your player got assaulted. Defend your player in the press conference. Be like, yeah, that was a dirty play. She should have hit the showers. She acts like she's the coach of the other team. I don't care if she's the best X's and O's when she's not. Get her the hell out of there. Either defend your players or get lost.
Still, the emotion behind White's comments was obvious. She was no longer responding only to one controversial foul. She was responding to what she viewed as a much larger attempt to divide her team and attack her character. And to be fair, there is an argument worth acknowledging on White's side. Being a head coach in the WNBA is already demanding, but being the head coach of the Indiana Fever, with Caitlin Clark at the center of one of the biggest stories in women's basketball, brings an entirely different level of scrutiny. Every decision becomes content. Every institution becomes content. Every facial expression becomes content, and apparently every controversial foul now receives enough analysis to qualify for its own congressional hearing. The Fever have become one of the league's biggest attractions, which means White is coaching under a microscope that very few coaches experience. However, Stephen A. Smith's argument is not necessarily about the standings. IT is about leadership. That brings us to one of the most uncomfortable parts of this entire situation, because Fever fans booed Stephanie White inside her own building.
She is the dumbest coach I've ever seen. Love, grace, humility, integrity. And you can go to hell if you don't love, grace, and integrity who I want. She is the dumbest human being to ever coach a professional sport. I say love wins. I will always have their back, except you didn't with Alyssa Thomas, except you didn't with Dejanay Carrington, except you didn't going back, except you never have. Hell, you're so stupid you can't even tell us what a woman is. You can't even tell us the difference between a man and a...
White was not walking into Chicago, New York, or Las Vegas as the opposing coach. She was walking into her own arena, surrounded by fans who were supposed to provide home court energy, and some of those same fans were booing her. Smith highlighted that exact point when he delivered his reality check, emphasizing that White was not the road team. She was the home team's coach. That is no longer ordinary criticism. That is a warning light. The situation became even more complicated because Caitlin Clark publicly defended White. Clark reportedly said the booing made her feel sick and made it clear that the players had their coach's back. She also indicated that the Fever were determined not to lose that game for White. That response matters because it creates two very different realities surrounding the same basketball team. Inside the locker room, White appears to have support. Outside the locker room, the criticism is getting louder. That is a brutal reality check because players supporting their coach is powerful, but it does not necessarily settle questions about coaching decisions.
I've had plenty of chances to come out with a statement like this and chose not to come out with a statement like this. But when she saw that her job was in jeopardy, after the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana came out with that statement, after she came out to say that she believed that the play between Dejanay Carrington and Sophie Cunningham wasn't intentional, when she came out with that statement and she saw how those fans reacted to her saying that, how the Governor of Indiana came out saying how she spoke about that, now she wants to make a statement. Now she wants to try to flip her words and say that, oh, she didn't see video clips and see all this. Stand on business.
The fascinating part is that Cunningham herself has supported White throughout the controversy, while White's broader message has been about standing together rather than allowing outside forces to fracture the team. Then Caitlin Clark delivered her own response where it matters most, which is on the basketball court. Against New York, Clark produced 22 points and 10 assists, as Indiana won 106-92. The Fever's victory also marked their 15th 100-point game of the season, adding another layer of irony to everything happening around the team. While people outside the locker room were debating whether Stephanie White should be fired, her team walked onto the court and scored 106 points. Basketball has a strange sense of humor. They want consistency. They want their coach to protect their players, and when something controversial happens, they want the explanation to match what they believe they saw with their own eyes. That last part may be the biggest issue White is facing. If she had simply said that she missed the play, acknowledged the mistake, and explained that she would handle the situation differently after seeing the replay, perhaps the controversy would have ended much sooner. Instead, the story continued because every new explanation created another question.
I really believe that Stephanie White deserves to be fired. I don't care about the injury excuse. I think that's what they're going to use to keep her for another year, which they will, because, well, look at the injury. See, she couldn't do her job. That's what they're going to do. And most likely, 99%, she'll be back. But honestly, the job she did, she deserves to get fired. She does. Let me tell you why. Number one, poor roster and cover for Bonner. To me, that alone should get her fired.
First came the claim that she did not see the play in real time. Then the footage became part of the debate. Then she acknowledged that the replay showed something much more serious. After that came an emotional speech about love, grace, humility, and kindness, followed by the unmistakable message that her critics could essentially go to hell. At that point, the story was no longer just about basketball. It had become a battle over perception. Dangerous because once fans believe something does not add up, every new statement risks becoming additional evidence for the theory they already believe. This is where Stephen A. Smith's intervention becomes particularly interesting. He is not simply criticizing White for one sentence or one reaction. He is challenging the entire chain of events and asking whether White understands the difference between supporting her players and avoiding accountability. Those two things are not the same. A coach can stand behind a player while admitting that the player made a mistake. A coach can defend a player's character while condemning a dangerous action. A coach can maintain a personal relationship with a former player while still acknowledging that the former player committed a serious foul. In fact, sometimes the strongest form of leadership comes willing to say both things at the same time.
Stephanie White needs to be fired. The ESPN analysts that hate Caitlin Clark said it all. It's the sisterhood. And the sisterhood is Stephanie White's team. That's where most of the dramas came from. In Caitlin Clark's, now Sophie Cunningham's career. Stephanie White just defended Dejanay Carrington's, whatever you want to call it, assault attack on Sophie Cunningham. She defended Alyssa Thomas's fist to the throat and made Alyssa Thomas out to be the victim.
That is why this confrontation has become so compelling. Stephen A. Smith is forcing a question that nobody involved in the controversy particularly wants to answer directly. What should accountability look like when the coach herself becomes part of the controversy? There is another layer that cannot be ignored. The Fever are not some anonymous rebuilding team quietly developing young players in front of a few hundred spectators. This is Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever, and every game is magnified. Every controversy spreads instantly. Every fan argument becomes a social media battle, and every comment from the coach can become a headline before the team has even finished the post-game meal. That pressure is unlikely to disappear. If anything, it is probably going to increase, and the more those moments are dissected, the harder it becomes for White to simply coach basketball without becoming part of the story. However, there is one thing that could completely change the narrative: winning. However, if the Fever begin losing, every unresolved controversy surrounding White could return with interest. That is why this moment matters. Stephen A. Smith has essentially placed a spotlight on a problem that was already burning beneath the surface. The booing suggests that some fans are deeply unhappy.
Stephanie White is getting absolutely worked today. Wow, it's bad. Do you know how bad you must be? Do you know how unfavorable you must? Do you know how out of touch you must be with your fan base, with your state, to where the lieutenant governor of your own state is demanding that you get fired?
The players defending White suggests that the locker room may not share that frustration. Caitlin Clark's response shows that the team's biggest star does not want the controversy dividing them, while White's emotional defense demonstrates that she believes the criticism has crossed a line. Yet several unanswered questions remain. Did Stephanie White genuinely fail to see the Carrington-Cunningham incident in real time? Or did she simply misjudge what she saw? Did her previous relationship with Carrington influence her initial reaction? Or is that criticism unfair? Can a coach tell critics to go to hell while simultaneously asking everyone else to lead with grace and humility? And perhaps most importantly, can White turn all of this noise into something that ultimately strengthens the Fever? Because Stephen A. Smith may have delivered the confrontation, but the next chapter belongs to Stephanie White. She now has the opportunity to do what everyone has to do when the noise becomes overwhelming, which is to answer the criticism with results.